Hello, Sparrow here with another helicopter video. Let's go over sling loading. Sling loading is an essential logistics tool which enables infantry units to receive supplies at the front lines. First things first, let's go over some essential key bindings. Go over to the helicopter controls and at the very bottom you'll see Sling Load Assistant. Bind this to something easily reachable. Next is the rope interaction. This is a very important key because the last thing you want to do when dropping something is using the mouse wheel and searching for the correct option. Now let's talk about approach. A good approach is essential to fast sling loading. Make sure that your flanks are clear of anything that may damage the rotors and come in slow and steady towards your load in a straight line. Make all side adjustments early on. Once you start nearing your load, open the Sling Load Assistant and watch for the red square. The next thing to do is to put that red square in the center of the sling load radar. You will see two intersecting lines for X and Y axis. When both these lines and the square are green, it means you can sling the object. One mistake I've seen many pilots make is that they try to sling it from the maximum altitude possible. Personally, this makes the job a lot more difficult for me. Instead, you want to be as close to the load as possible, so don't be afraid to drop some altitude, provided that there are no objects nearby to damage the rotors. Awesome. Now that we've loaded the object, we can be on a merry way to dropping it. Let's head over to the military base near the airfield. Dropping the object is in some ways easier and in some ways more difficult. When you're receiving fire, it's okay to drop ammo from a certain altitude. Open up the Sling Load Assistant and you'll see the altitude and a bar on the right side which will go from red to orange to green. Red means that if you drop the object, it will most likely sustain damage and may be destroyed. Orange means that the object is not touching the ground, but dropping it from that altitude will most likely not seriously damage the object. A green bar indicates that the object is come in contact with the ground or is very close. In most cases, you want the object to contact the ground before dropping it. The reason being that if you drop it from an altitude on the slope, the object may start rolling downhill and can get destroyed, lost, or end up in a non-retrievable place. That being said, it is prudent to drop the object as fast as possible if you start receiving fire, because getting shot down while trying to perfect the drop will not help anyone. On a side note, if you're not receiving fire, it is okay to use auto hover to make sure that you don't roll the ammo around on the ground when dropping it. However, try to not use it when picking up the object, because in the long run, it takes more time and is personally more difficult to sling load. Finally, let's talk about heavy loads. The M113 in this case is one of the heaviest objects liftable. The weight of the object must be considered in such cases. Let's go over why heavy objects can be trickier. At first, I'm able to lift the M113 seemingly without problems because I had some momentum going up. Let's see what happens if I use auto hover in the same place. As you can see, I keep losing altitude without lowering the collective. In auto hover, even if I keep the collective raise button pressed, the M113 won't budge and won't lift off the ground. It's just too heavy. In order to take care of this, we need to build up some momentum before the ropes get taut. Therefore, we disable the auto hover, lose some altitude, then go forward to yank the M113 off the ground. There we go. Now we have a successful lift. Be very careful when you have an object as heavy as this in tow. Let's drop it back at the military base. When dropping a vehicle, it is always advisable to do so when the vehicle has contact to the ground to prevent it from rolling over. It's fine to use auto hover here to gently lower it to the ground. However, since we're not big fans of auto hover, we should always try to strive towards perfecting our approach and altitude to make the use of auto hover unnecessary. Here's a perfect example of what happens if you don't line your approach properly when picking up an object. The helicopter is not perfectly aligned, and I keep losing the sling. One thing to keep in mind is, as soon as the object touches the ground, your helicopter will suddenly become more maneuverable and lighter. So keep your hands off the raise collective when dropping a heavy object, otherwise the heli will shoot up in the air and can possibly roll over the vehicle. As always, practice makes perfect. Hope this video was helpful, and have a nice day.